They called her the poor girl at the talent show. Then a stranger stepped forward and changed everything. My name is Naomi. I'm 24. I live in a small apartment in Raleigh Heights and work at a local animal shelter. I love music. I hate olives. And up until 2 years ago, I thought I was going to marry the love of my life. His name was Travis. I met Travis when I was 19. He was charming, tall, had this way of looking at you like you were the only person in the room. He loved to talk about dreams. His, mine, ours. We dated for 4 years. We planned a life. We talked about kids, houses, Sunday barbecues. I was there when he got promoted. He was there when my mom passed away. He was everything, or at least, I thought he was. Then came Avery. Avery was the kind of girl who made you feel invisible without even trying. Blonde, bold, always dressed like she was walking a red carpet, even at the grocery store. She came from money, went to a private college, and made it clear she thought people like me were just background noise. Travis met her at some networking mixer, and 3 months later, I got a text at midnight. We need to talk. By morning, I was single. He didn't even have the decency to do it in person. He said Avery made him feel more like himself, said he needed something different, said he hoped I'd heal quickly. Then he blocked me. For a while, I disappeared. No social media, no outings. I just poured myself into the shelter work. I took on night shifts, fed stray dogs, cleaned kennels till my hands bled. It was the only thing that didn't lie to me, the only place I felt needed. A year passed. Then came the wedding invitation. It was cream-colored, fancy, with gold foil, my name written in elegant script, Naomi Winters. The invite came from Travis's mom. She always liked me. I think she sent it without asking them. Maybe she hoped I'd show up and stop the wedding. Or maybe she just wanted me to see what I had lost. I wasn't going to go, but then something happened. I was walking home from work one afternoon, still in my scrubs, hair tied back, shoes dirty. At the corner of my street, I saw them, Travis and Avery. They didn't see me. They were laughing, holding hands, standing next to a bright white convertible with pink flowers on the hood. Avery tossed her head back and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, I'm just glad you're not with that poor girl anymore. I stopped cold. Travis just chuckled and pulled her close. They drove off, leaving behind the smell of expensive perfume and betrayal. That night, I stared at the invitation again. I wasn't going to stop the wedding, but I was going, not to cry, not to beg. I was going to watch, and maybe, just maybe, see if karma needed a little push. The wedding was 3 weeks later, held at this fancy vineyard in Delmore County, a place so exclusive it didn't even have a sign. The kind of place where people whispered instead of talked, where the napkins were folded into swans, and the waiters wore gloves. I wore a simple navy blue dress, nothing flashy. I did my makeup myself, just enough to feel strong. I even borrowed a small clutch from my neighbor. When I arrived, I saw them through the crowd. Travis in a white tux, Avery in a shimmering gown that looked like it cost more than my yearly rent. They were posing for pictures under an arch of roses, laughing, kissing, and then Avery saw me. Her smile froze. She whispered something to Travis. He turned, and for a second, just 1 second, his eyes flicked with something that looked like guilt. Then it was gone. They didn't come to say hello. I didn't expect them to. I kept to myself during the ceremony. I sat quietly, watched them exchange vows under the sun, pretending I didn't notice the way Avery kept smirking in my direction. It wasn't until the reception that things took a turn. There was dancing, toasts, drunken laughter. I stayed near the back, sipping water, trying not to think too much. That's when it happened. The DJ called for the couple's first dance. The crowd clapped. Avery took the mic and said, before we dance, I want to give a little shout out. She looked straight at me. I just want to thank everyone who's been a part of our journey, she said sweetly. Even the ones who thought they'd be the bride today. The room got quiet. People glanced around, confused. I stared at her, heart thudding in my chest. And to the ones who are still struggling, she went on. Don't worry, you'll find love too. Someday. A few people laughed, unsure. My throat tightened. She smiled wider. You know who you are. That's when a waitress walked out from the kitchen, holding a tray of drinks. She was young, probably just out of college. Her hands shook slightly as she passed out flutes of champagne. She came toward our table, paused, and leaned a little closer to me. You don't know me, she whispered quickly, but I need to tell you something. I blinked. She looked nervous, scared even. Her eyes darted toward Avery, then back to me. She whispered again. She paid someone to fake a pregnancy test. She blackmailed him into marrying her. I have proof. I felt the floor tilt under me. What? I breathed. She nodded, lips tight. He doesn't know. Not yet. But he will. I stared at her, stunned. Then she slipped a folded napkin into my hand, turned and walked away like nothing happened. Inside the napkin was a flash drive. My heart slammed against my ribs. I looked toward the dance floor. Avery was laughing again, twirling under the lights. But something inside me had just changed. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about truth. And maybe, just maybe, justice. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to take everything they used to break me and use it to break her mask wide open. For now, I sat back and watched. But the truth, it was already coming. And this time, I wasn't afraid to light the match. The room went quiet. For a second, you could only hear the clinking of a spoon that fell to the floor. All eyes turned to the waitress, standing by the head table. She wasn't tall or flashy. In fact, she blended in so well no one had noticed her. Until now. But her voice, it cut through the room like a knife. Sorry, she said again, though her voice wasn't trembling anymore. I just couldn't keep quiet after what she said. I stared at her, my hands frozen around the half-filled champagne glass. People were whispering now. One of the groomsmen leaned closer to another and muttered something. The DJ awkwardly lowered the volume of the soft background music. The bride looked like someone had thrown a glass of cold water in her face. Her cheeks were bright red. Excuse me, she snapped, standing up. Who do you think you are? The waitress smiled, small, polite, but with something sharp behind it. I'm just the waitress, ma'am. But I also happen to know something. Something real. The bride's hands curled into fists. Security, she called out. Get her out. No, someone interrupted. It was the groom, my ex, Brian. He stood slowly, eyes on the waitress. Let her speak, he said. My heart was pounding. I wasn't sure what was going on. The truth? What truth? The waitress nodded, then looked at me. This isn't about me, she said gently. It's about her, and what she did. Everyone's eyes turned to me now. The bride let out a dry laugh. Oh please, what is this? A movie. She's just mad because I'm marrying her ex. She's jealous. Really? The waitress replied. Because that's not what it looked like when I saw your little envelope switch. The bride's face turned a deeper shade of red. What are you talking about? The waitress pulled something from her pocket. A small phone. She tapped the screen. I was recording the table arrangements before the guests arrived. Part of my job today was helping set up and get approval from the planner. And while I was at it, I saw you sneak something into an envelope and switch it with another. The bride's lips parted slightly. You're insane. I stood up. I couldn't sit anymore. What envelope? I asked, my voice low. The waitress turned her phone around, showing it to Brian first. This one, she said. Brian watched. I watched him. I didn't need to see the screen. I could tell from his face that something was very, very wrong. Is this true? He asked her, voice sharp now. The bride hesitated. Brian, I don't know what she's showing you. This is just some poor woman trying to stir up drama. Wrong choice of words. Again, the room gasped. A few older guests actually looked away. No one likes a bride who calls people poor. In a room filled with working-class family and friends, the waitress looked at her, then turned back to me. You didn't know, did you? I shook my head. No. She took a breath. I'll let the video explain. But she's been hiding things. Things that should have been yours. A ripple of murmurs broke through the room. One of the bridesmaids actually stepped back from the bride's side. Before anything else could be said, a man walked in from the hallway, tall in a gray suit, holding a briefcase. No one recognized him. He walked right up to the bride and placed the briefcase on the table. I believe you were expecting me, he said. The bride's face went pale. Who are you? Brian asked. The man opened the briefcase and pulled out a folder. Legal documents. I was sent here by Mr. Arnold Stetson. He asked me to make sure the right person received what was due to her. Today. Arnold? I whispered. That was Brian's late uncle. The only one in his family who'd ever treated me kindly. The man looked straight at me and smiled. Yes, he left something in his will. And I believe it belongs to you, miss. My knees felt weak. What is it? The man looked around the silent room. You'll see. But first, I need to speak with the bride. Alone. The bride's mouth dropped open. I don't know what this is about. "Oh, I think you do," the waitress said quietly. The man took the bride gently by the elbow and led her out of the hall. Everyone was talking again, trying to piece things together. Some people stared at me, others just whispered in corners. Brian looked completely lost, like his world had tilted sideways. I stood there, silent, my chest tight. I wasn't sure whether to cry or run. The waitress came up to me and handed me a folded note. "He wrote this for you," she said. "Mr. Stetson." Before he passed, my hands trembled as I unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, familiar. I hadn't seen it in years. "Dear Madison, I always knew you had a good heart, not like the others who smiled with their teeth but lied with their eyes. I made a decision before I passed, and it's time the truth came to light. I asked my lawyer to hold on to this, until the moment I knew they would try to take it from you. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you myself, but I trust you'll know what to do now. Sincerely, Arnold." Tears stung my eyes. "What did she take?" I asked the waitress, voice barely a whisper. The waitress gave a sad smile. "Your future, but not for long." And then the doors burst open again. The bride was back. Her face was wild, furious, but also afraid. "She doesn't deserve it," she yelled, pointing at me. "It should have been mine." The crowd went dead silent again, and that's when the lawyer stepped forward, holding up the opened will. "That's not what your uncle thought," he said, "because as of today, the controlling shares of Stetson Industries belong to Madison." People gasped. Some stood. Cameras clicked. The bride's knees buckled. And I didn't say a word. Not yet. Because this was just the beginning. I stood frozen. The words echoed in my head like thunder. Controlling shares of Stetson Industries belong to Madison. People were standing now, guests from both sides of the aisle, some with hands over their mouths, some filming, some just whispering things I couldn't quite hear. The bride? No, Sabrina looked like her soul had left her body. Her makeup was flawless minutes ago, but now her mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her expensive white dress seemed to weigh 100 pounds as she staggered backward. Brian just stared at me. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "Why you?" The lawyer turned toward him. "Because his uncle trusted her," he said. "He knew she wouldn't sell off the company or fire people for personal gain. He said, and I quote, 'She may not be blood, but she's the only one I ever met with honor in this family.'" Brian looked like he'd been slapped. Sabrina suddenly screamed. "No, this isn't happening. That old man promised me." "He promised you nothing," the lawyer replied calmly, flipping the pages of the will. "What he did do was install security cameras in his home, including one that recorded you trying to forge his signature. He never said a word. He just rewrote the will the next day. Gave it all to Madison. I thought I was dreaming. The company, Arnold's multi-million-dollar tech empire, the thing Brian had always said was his birthright. Now it was mine." The lawyer turned to me and held out a folder. "There are a few signatures you'll need to make this official. But as of today, you own 52% of Stetson Industries. The rest belongs to a trust fund. Your call what to do with it." I took the folder slowly, my hands still trembling. Sabrina tried to grab it. "No, you can't just give her everything." But the waitress, still standing beside me like a silent bodyguard, stepped in her way. "Try it," she said. Security finally arrived. 2 tall men in black. They didn't even wait for orders. One took Sabrina by the arm. She twisted and shouted, "You're going to regret this. All of you." I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not a cruel laugh. A sad one. The kind you let out when the pain has been sitting on your chest for years, and someone finally opens a window. "You know what's funny, Sabrina?" I said, stepping toward her. "You stole my boyfriend, humiliated me in front of everyone, and told me I was nothing." She stopped fighting, just stared at me. "But you were wrong," I continued. "You didn't break me. You just reminded me who I am. And guess what? I don't need to marry into money. I am the money." The room exploded. People clapped, cheered. Even a few waiters started whistling. Brian blinked like he was seeing me for the first time. "Mads." "No," I said, lifting a hand. "Don't. You made your choice. But I didn't know. You knew who I was," I interrupted. "You just didn't think I was enough." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I turned to the waitress. "Who are you?" I asked. She smiled. "Just someone who believes in doing the right thing." I knew Mr. Stetson. He helped pay for my brother's surgery. I volunteered to work this wedding, because I heard the rumors. "What rumors?" "That she planned to ruin you today." and take everything. She bragged about it to her bridesmaids last week at the rehearsal dinner. I swallowed hard. "Thank you," I whispered. She nodded. "Mr. Stetson wouldn't rest in peace if you didn't get what was yours." The lawyer leaned in. "There's one more thing." "Oh no, what now?" He pulled out a smaller envelope. Sealed. "He wanted you to read this privately. It's about your next step." I took it gently, holding it to my chest. Everything was spinning. One minute I was heartbroken at my ex's wedding. The next, I was the richest woman in the room. Sabrina was dragged out, still screaming. Brian stood there like a broken statue. And I walked out, not as a girl who was left behind, but as the woman who walked into her power. And whatever that next step was, I was ready. The cold wind outside the wedding hall hit my face, but it felt like a warm hug compared to the heat in that room. I stood on the stone steps, heart pounding in my chest, clutching the envelope like it held the meaning of life. People poured out behind me, whispers floating through the air like birds scattering. Some were still stunned, others were curious. A few even looked proud, but I didn't care what they thought anymore. I stepped away from the crowd, walked past the white limos, and found a quiet bench near the parking lot, just under a flickering light. My heels pinched, and my hair was half undone, but I didn't fix a thing. I sat, ripped open the envelope, and pulled out a single handwritten letter. It read, "Madison, if you're reading this, then my time has come. I wasn't a perfect man, but I knew a good soul when I saw one. You didn't ask for anything, yet you gave more than anyone in that family ever did. You were kind, honest, and strong, when it would have been easier to be cold. That's why I chose you. But this gift isn't just about business. It's about justice. Sabrina and Brian, they don't know what love is, but you love with honor. Use what I've left you not just for revenge, but for change. There's more to this than just the company. You'll find the rest at my lake house. The key is in the folder. Arnold." I didn't realize I was crying until the paper got wet. I folded the letter gently and held it to my heart. The man who once sat beside me during quiet family dinners, who asked me about my dreams when Brian was too busy checking his phone, who offered to help me pay for grad school when my scholarship fell through. He saw me, really saw me, and now he'd given me a key that could unlock more than just a door. I opened the folder again. There it was, taped inside a corner pocket. A small brass key, labeled Lake Sycamore, back cabin. I'd been there once, years ago during a summer cookout. It was peaceful, far away from everything. A perfect place to hide something important. I didn't hesitate. I called for a ride, canceled my hotel stay, and left everything else behind. In 2 hours, I was on a quiet road, trees flying past the window, my dress wrinkled, makeup gone, hair in a loose ponytail. It felt right. I arrived just as the sun started to rise, painting the sky in soft pinks and orange. The lake was like glass, silent, untouched. I found the cabin. The key turned with a soft click. Inside was dust, a few old chairs, and a box on the table with my name on it. I sat, opened it. Inside, documents, photos, letters, and something that made my stomach drop. A manila folder with Sabrina's name on the tab. I pulled it out. The first page showed wire transfers. Money, huge amounts, being moved from Arnold's charity foundation into offshore accounts, under Sabrina's name. She'd been stealing from him for years. The second page, a printed transcript of a call between Brian and Sabrina. He's going to find out eventually. So what? He's old. He'll forget. We just need to keep Madison away long enough to move things around. They planned it. Together. They knew what they were doing. Every dinner, every fake apology, every time Sabrina smiled at me like I was beneath her. It was part of the plan. And Brian, he let it happen. He was supposed to love me. I sat there in that quiet cabin, shaking. The papers spread out on the old wooden table. And then under the last document was a small flash drive. I slid it into my laptop. It was a video. Arnold, sitting in the same chair I was now sitting in. If you're watching this, Madison, then you found everything. I knew they were lying. I knew they were stealing. But I needed someone I trusted to carry it forward. I'm sorry I didn't stop them sooner. But you have what you need. The board of Stetson Industries meets in 3 days. Show them the truth. Wipe them out. Clean the company. Start fresh. I believe in you. The screen went dark. 3 days. I had 3 days to burn everything they'd built. Not with fire, but with truth. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. My hands were steady now. My mind focused. For the first time in years, Sabrina thought she'd won. Brian thought he could toss me away like nothing. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I called an old friend, Daniel, smart, loyal, and once an intern at the same company. He answered on the second ring. Mads, wow, it's been years. What's going on? I need your help, I said. I'm about to expose something big, and I need someone I can trust. You had me at hello, he joked. By evening he arrived at the cabin, and we laid out everything. He whistled low. They're so screwed. Not yet, I said. But they will be. We made copies, organized the evidence, prepared statements, and then I called the board secretary. Hi, this is Madison Lane. I need to speak at the next board meeting. There was silence on the line. Then a nervous cough. Yes, of course. You have that right now. Yes, I said. I do. We hung up. Daniel looked at me across the table. You're sure about this? I nodded. They tried to bury me, I said. But I'm not dirt. And as I closed the box and locked the cabin door behind me, I knew Chapter 5 would be the beginning of their end. 3 days later, Stetson Industries' glass tower pierced the gray morning sky like a knife. I stood at the base of it, watching my reflection in the sleek entrance doors. Dressed in a navy blue pantsuit, Arnold once complimented during a Christmas dinner, hair tied back in a neat bun. I looked nothing like the woman who had walked out of her own wedding just days ago. But inside, that woman still burned. I wasn't here for closure. I was here for justice. Daniel waited in the lobby, holding a slim black case, our arsenal. He wore a confident grin that didn't reach his eyes. Ready to go to war? He asked. I gave a single nod. Let's give them a show. The receptionist's eyes widened the moment she saw me. She stammered something about Miss Lane, and we weren't expecting. I'm scheduled to speak, I said calmly. You can confirm with the board secretary. 5 minutes later, I was led to the 36th floor. The boardroom was bigger than I remembered. Cold, expensive, filled with the same men and women who once toasted to my engagement with crystal champagne glasses. And at the head of the table, Sabrina. She wore black like she was in mourning. Her lips curled into a practiced smile. Madison, how bold of you to come. I'm not here for compliments, I replied, placing the folder on the polished table. I'm here for truth. Brian was there too. He sat near the end, pale, avoiding my eyes. I didn't even flinch. The chairman, a silver-haired man named George Remy, adjusted his glasses. Miss Lane, we received your request. You said you had evidence to present? Yes, I said, opening the case. I passed out copies of the documents, wire transfers, transcripts, and legal files. Daniel handed out USB drives. This, I said, is proof that Sabrina Hawthorne has been stealing millions from the Stetson Foundation and laundering them through offshore accounts. Murmurs broke out. Sabrina's smirk cracked. And that's not all, I continued. This folder contains a recorded conversation between her and Brian, where they discuss misleading Arnold Stetson and manipulating the company's finances. Gasps now. One board member stood. Is this real? Daniel stepped forward. It's been verified by 2 independent auditors. And there's more. He clicked the remote. Arnold's face appeared on the large monitor at the front of the room. His voice echoed in the silence. They don't deserve to run this company. Madison does. She's the one I trust. When the video ended, the room was frozen. George leaned forward. Sabrina, do you have a response to these allegations? Sabrina laughed, a short, humorless sound. You're going to believe her. She's just a jilted ex. I'm the legal heir now. I cut in sharply. You knew that. You just didn't think I'd use it. She stood suddenly, her voice rising. This is insane. That man was old. He didn't know what he was doing. He was senile. Interesting, said another board member. Because you're the one who filed over $4 million in consulting expenses that led nowhere. And the foundation, another asked. That was supposed to build a cancer center, not fund your shopping sprees in Milan. Sabrina backed away. Brian finally spoke. I didn't know she was doing that much. Oh, save it, I snapped. You let her humiliate me. You stood by while she wrecked your own family's legacy. Silence. George turned to me. What do you want, Miss Lane? I looked around the table. I want her out. I want her banned from any future role in this company. And I want an investigation into all foundation activities from the past 3 years. Every dollar. He nodded slowly. And you? He asked. You want to take over? I paused. then said clearly, "Yes, I do, they voted. It wasn't close." Sabrina screamed as security escorted her out. Brian followed quietly, head down, like a ghost of the man I once loved. The doors closed behind them, and just like that, it was done. The board turned back to me, some with cautious optimism, others with clear support. "Welcome to Stetson Industries, Miss Lane," George said. I smiled faintly, but deep down I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Because Arnold didn't just leave me a company, he left me a mission. 2 months had passed since Sabrina was dragged out of that boardroom, like a disgraced queen losing her crown. I hadn't seen her since, but her name still lingered in whispers around the office, spoken like a ghost that had once haunted the company's walls. I thought taking over Stetson Industries would be my victory lap, but it turned out the real war had just begun. I didn't inherit a dream. I inherited a mess, a company with secrets buried so deep, even the foundations felt unstable. It started with the letters. At first they came to my assistant's desk, anonymous envelopes with no return address. Inside were old photos, receipts and documents. Most of it was harmless. But then came one that stopped me cold. It was a picture of Arnold, smiling, with a woman I didn't recognize. They were standing outside a small, rundown diner in Dayton, Ohio. Scribbled on the back, "She deserves to know. Dig deeper." I stared at that photo for hours. Daniel and I made a plan. We took a weekend, booked a rental car, and drove straight to Dayton. The diner was still there, barely standing, rusted signs and all. A woman named Agnes ran the place. She had gray hair pulled into a messy bun, and a cane that looked like it had seen 2 world wars. She took one look at Arnold's picture and sighed. "Haven't seen that man in over 30 years," she said, pouring us weak coffee. But I remember that smile. He used to come here every Saturday morning, always tipped in cash. Said this was the only place that felt like real life. I asked her about the woman in the photo. She hesitated, then disappeared into a back room, and came out holding a small shoebox. "This belonged to her," she said, handing it to me. "She passed a few years ago. Cancer." I didn't know where to send it. Inside were old letters, handwritten, from Arnold. One of them made my heart stop. "Mara, if things were different, if I didn't owe the company so much, I would have stayed. You were the only person who ever made me feel human." I looked up at Daniel, stunned. "Who was she?" Agnes smiled softly. "Mara, she was his real love on. Before all the money, before the suits, that man was gonna marry her once." I sat there holding that box, feeling something crack open inside me. Arnold had left me everything, but not because I was his charity case. He had seen something in me that reminded him of the woman he loved. Maybe it wasn't just about business after all. We drove back to New Haven in silence. Back at Stetson HQ, things had only grown more complicated. Reports started showing up that someone had been using my name to authorize withdrawals from the foundation. Not small amounts, huge ones. Tens of thousands of dollars disappearing from the books. I confronted our finance director, a man named Glenn, but he only shrugged. "You signed off," he said, handing me digital documents. Except, I hadn't. Someone was forging my approval. Daniel ran a trace on the documents. The IP address didn't come from the office. It came from a luxury apartment complex downtown. We drove there at night. Apartment 23B. I knocked. No answer. Daniel picked the lock like it was second nature. We stepped inside to a room that looked like something out of a spy movie. 2 computers, cameras, papers, a whiteboard filled with arrows, and red strings connecting names. At the center, my face. Under it, in thick red marker. She took everything. And then I saw it on the far desk, open and glowing in the dark. A document. A plan. Sabrina Hawthorne wasn't done. She had disappeared after the boardroom meltdown, but she hadn't gone far. She was planning her return. She was watching me, and she was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Then we heard it. A click. Behind us. I turned around slowly, and there she was. Sabrina, wearing all black, her hair in a tight ponytail, eyes blazing. "You really thought you won," she whispered. I didn't get a chance to speak. She raised a small device and pressed a button. Everything went dark. Power cut, cameras killed, alarms silenced. We were locked in. Then, out of the shadows, more footsteps. Not just hers. Someone else was with her. And when they stepped into the light, My blood turned cold. It was Brian. He looked different. Cold. Hardened. He wasn't the weak, fumbling man I'd last seen. He was part of this. He stepped forward and said one word that shook me to my core. Run. The lights came back on. The apartment door swung open, and someone screamed from the hallway. It wasn't Sabrina. It wasn't Brian. It was someone else. And what they saw was about to change everything. The scream echoed down the hallway like a warning shot, sharp and shrill. Daniel and I froze. Sabrina's face twitched. Not fear, not surprise, irritation. Brian flinched, his hand halfway to the door, but Sabrina stopped him. Don't, she hissed. That wasn't supposed to happen yet. But the door was already swinging open wider. In stumbled a young woman, no older than 21, her eyes wide with panic. She was wearing a waitress uniform. Help me, she gasped. They told me to bring files, but something's wrong. Sabrina's eyes flared. What files? Who are you? The girl looked at me, then down at the table filled with documents. Her voice trembled. You don't recognize me, but I recognize you. I stepped closer. Do I know you? She nodded slowly, then pulled something from her apron pocket. A flash drive. I found this at the wedding, she whispered. Your ex's wedding. I was a server there. My mind snapped back. The wedding. The moment Sabrina had humiliated me, mocked me in front of everyone like I was just some poor girl trying to steal back a man who had already replaced me. She'd leaned in with that cruel smirk and whispered, "Some people just don't belong in lace." And now the waitress from that same night stood trembling in front of me, holding the one thing that could flip the entire story upside down. I wasn't supposed to hear it, the girl continued, her voice gaining strength. But I did. Sabrina was talking to someone in the back. I recorded it. She was bragging about how she got Arnold to change the will, about how she threatened someone named Mara to stay quiet. The air was sucked from the room. I looked at Sabrina. For the first time, she looked rattled. You don't know what you're talking about, she barked. But the girl plugged the flash drive into Daniel's laptop. We all watched as the screen lit up. First static, then a crackling voice. He was old and soft. All I had to do was cry a little, pretend I cared about his legacy. The fool didn't even realize I forged the Second Amendment to the will. By the time he found out, it was too late. What about Mara? Dealt with. She was dying anyway. I made sure no one heard from her again. Laughter. My knees went weak. Sabrina's smile had vanished. Brian backed away from her slowly, his hands up. You told me it was all legal, he muttered. Sabrina spun on him. You idiot. You were part of this. Don't turn on me now. But Brian was already inching toward the door. Daniel hit a button. The file uploaded instantly to the company's server. One click away from being blasted to the entire board, the press, and every major investor. Sabrina lunged. But the waitress, that brave girl, stepped between us and held her ground. You mocked her like she was trash, the girl said softly. But you forgot. People remember kindness. I never forgot how she treated me like a human being at that wedding. You just threw money around like it made you royalty. Daniel clicked send. The email whooshed out into the world. Sabrina froze. Then something wild flashed in her eyes. She grabbed a chair and slammed it against the laptop. Sparks flew. The screen cracked. Too late. It was already out. We left the apartment in a rush. By morning, every business blog and news outlet was carrying the headline. Stetson scandal, fraud, forgery, and the woman who fought back. The board met that afternoon. Sabrina was permanently banned. Brian was under investigation. And me? I was offered the full CEO role. No interim. No questions. I didn't celebrate. Instead, I went to the cemetery. Mara's grave was small, overgrown, forgotten. I laid flowers down and whispered, "He didn't forget you." The waitress, her name was Tessa, now works as my personal assistant. She's studying law. I'm paying for it. And that wedding? The one where Sabrina tried to destroy me. It ended up being the beginning of my biggest revenge. Not because I ruined her, but because I rebuilt myself, in full view of the world. And when Sabrina tried to mock me, a waitress revealed a truth that silenced everyone. That's the kind of revenge I'll always stand by. The kind that starts with kindness and ends with justice.